Peel back the curtains and you'll see the reality of your life. I don't want to mix metaphors here, but just like people can easily live their lives wearing invisible shackles, we can also live our lives completely surrounded by invisible curtains. When you put curtains in your house, you do it to block out light. It's your way of regulating natural lighting that comes through your windows. Did you know that you're doing the same thing with reality? However, instead of windows, you have your mind. And there are certain beliefs and practices that we have that block out reality. At the very least, it prevents us from seeing things as they really are. Most people are mentally lazy. There, I said it. We really are. First of all, the older you get, the more you assume things. Now, I can't blame you for thinking this way because when you were growing up, you had to experience things firsthand and then make predictions based on those experiences or based on what people tell you about those experiences. You have to go through that process so you can learn enough to see certain patterns. As you get older, you can safely rely on the wealth of experience you've had and more or less make certain assumptions. At this point, you would think that it is fairly safe for you to assume that once you see certain patterns, then you pretty much can see the rest of what will happen. This makes a lot of sense in most situations. You don't want to sit around and wait for things to fully develop when you know full well there's a high chance that things will turn out the way they've always turned out. However, this can only go so far. Also, when you get older, you tend to use this power of assumption in situations where they don't count, or at least they shouldn't be applied to. You can use this with people you meet, and this can lead to very unfair and even downright cruel dismissal of people. I remember one time I was at a business meeting, and one of the guys who was supposed to make a presentation showed up in shorts and flip-flops. The back of my mind, I automatically assumed that this person was a slacker. No way is this guy serious. He made his presentation and he left. I only learned a week later that person was actually a multi-billionaire. So much for my assumptions, right? It turned out that we needed him more than he needed us. He obviously did not need our money. I assumed that since he had that attire, or lack thereof, that he wasn't professional or that he was some sort of loser. Do you see how this works? As you get older, you need less and less input for you to jump to conclusions, and this can be very dangerous. You might actually be locking yourself out from a tremendous amount of truths and opportunities out there. Another form of mental laziness involves your expectations. In a way, this works in a similar way to assumptions. When we find ourselves in certain situations, we think we are right to expect certain results. We feel that somehow, some way, we're entitled to certain things. This is a problem because the more entitled you feel to certain results, the less likely you are to work for them. You're less likely to be open-minded. You're not looking for a challenge. You become less flexible. It can lead to a serious mess. Unfortunately, the only person we have to blame is ourselves. It's too easy to become a prisoner of one's expectations. Finally, we can develop such a crippling sense of entitlement that we do not take initiative. We feel that the world has to come to us. We feel that people have to impress us, or they have to take the first step or make the effort. I'm sorry to be the one to break this to you, but if you're trying to make it in this world, you're going to have to take the initiative. You're going to have to bring value to other people's lives. It's not like they owe you fame, riches, and power. You have to prove yourself. You have to establish a track record. You have to develop a brand. All of these take initiative. All the things I've described above can act like mental curtains. In fact, the longer you refuse to cast aside those curtains, the easier it would be for you to feel stuck. Please understand that you're feeling mentally stuck not because somebody has a gun pointed at your head and demands that you be miserable and powerless. Instead, you have allowed this mental laziness and all these negative mental habits to get the better of you, so you basically end up focusing on the tried and proven, the known quantities or the safe spaces in your life. Everything else is off limits. You just can't be bothered with them. You'd rather focus on what you think you know. This is mental laziness. These act as curtains that block out the healthy challenges you need to master reality. To peel back the curtains of your life, you need to do one thing: take inventory of your life. Have you ever worked for a retail store? When I worked for a pharmacy right after high school, I was hired as temporary staff to take inventory. I didn't know that the typical drugstore had so much stuff. I saw this firsthand because I had to count everything. That's what an inventory is. You have a clipboard in one hand and you have a pen in the other, and you are looking through different categories and subcategories of products, physically counting these products, sorting them. Sometimes we have to take out a box and store stuff away. In many cases, we have to go back to the storage room, take stuff out of boxes, count them as well as count and mark the boxes. That's a lot of counting. That's a lot of tracking and a lot of monitoring. That's how an inventory works. You have to do the same with your life. You have to take inventory of your life. Believe it or not, this is more difficult because instead of counting stuff like medication bottles, product packages, or envelopes and boxes, you're going to have to take inventory of the things that you assume to be true, what you expect from certain situations in your life. You have to become aware of the situations where you adopt certain mindsets, and you have to pay attention to your lack of initiative. That's a lot of stuff. This requires heavy mental lifting. It also requires a tremendous amount of honesty. Let's face it, do you feel good when somebody says that you're lazy? Do you get butterflies in your stomach when somebody says in so many ways that you are living a lie? Of course not. Most people don't want to hear that kind of stuff, but that's exactly the kind of conclusion that you would get if you take an honest inventory of your life. It would turn out, and I can guarantee this, that a lot of the things that you assume to be a certain way in your life are actually quite different. They turn out to be very different from what you assume them to be. They may be familiar. You might not even consciously think about them, but once you start peeling back your mental curtains and you start putting in the work to see things for what they are, you might be in for a rude shock.